Hi everyone, welcome back to Good Knits by SK here on YouTube. You can also find me by that name on Instagram and Ravelry, so go ahead and give me a follow at both of those. For those that are brand new here, I am Sherry. I currently live in Amsterdam with my husband, but we're from Canada and we've been living here for the last 6 years. And I am in product management for a tech SaaS company. I feel like I have a lot to update on today. I haven't filmed an episode in, I think, about a month, primarily due to the fact that I was sick with a cold for about 2 weeks of that. So I have been knitting a lot, but I haven't really felt up to actually recording an episode. And then I also had to go to Paris for work again for a good chunk of a week. So yeah, it's been quite busy around here. And right now I am preparing to leave for Canada in a few days to go home to visit family. So I will be gone for about another 2 weeks. So expect that probably a podcast won't come until mid-December again. Let's start with what I am wearing, which is not a new episode or not a new item. This is my sweater number 8 from My Favourite Things Knitwear. I made it, I think, 2.5 years ago now, and it's still one of my most worn garments. So I knit this in a size medium. It's a little bit big. I also got a little bit lazy. It made the sleeves and arms too short when I made it because I was getting very tired of knitting 2x2 rib. And I wish that I had fixed it, but that's okay. I will get into what I'm going to do kind of in the same realm of this a little bit later in the episode. So I don't have too much to update on from a life perspective. Like I said, I've been sick, so I haven't really been getting up to much around here. And now I'm just really trying to get everything planned for leaving. Before we get into the knitting stuff today, I also just really wanted to highlight something really cute that my mom did. So during COVID, she started making cards. So she buys these kits and she's done all these classes, and so every once in a while she will send snail mail cards to us, which I just love getting. And when I started my YouTube channel, she sent me this knitting card, which is super cute. It's so detailed. And then when I hit 1,000 subscribers, she sent me another one. So this is just the best mail to get, and it's just really nice knowing my family is watching and supporting me. So yeah, that kind of warms my heart. It's really nice to have family that's so supportive. So today this is really just going to be a traditional podcast episode. I have a few finished objects, way too many whips or work in progress, and a few yarn acquisitions in the last few weeks. And I will also talk a little bit about what I'm planning to knit on my trip, because I'm actually really struggling with what to bring with me on this specific trip. And I think it'll depend if some yarn arrives before I leave, because I bought a project specifically for this trip. So getting into my first finished object, I have completed the Storm Sweater Junior for my nephew. It was his birthday, November 5th. And I made this for when I go home so I can give it to him at the end of the month. He is just turned 1 year old, so this is the 1 to 2 year old size. And this pattern is by Petite Knit. I think everybody has come across this at some point now, so you probably already know that. I will say for this pattern, I absolutely loved making it. This is probably one of the most fun projects I've ever made, especially because on the size 1 to 2, you pretty much don't repeat any of the sections other than on the sleeves. So when you're working on it, you're kind of always doing a new section, which makes it really addictive. So I feel like this went pretty quickly for the most part. It helped that it was also a junior size. And the pattern was really clear. So I think I messed up the chart on the back, which I had talked about last time. So I made a mistake with the diamond pattern. I read it right to left in all cases instead of on the wrong side reading left to right. That was my bad. I decided not to fix it. It's on the back. It doesn't really matter. But on the rest, I think for the most part it's error-free. The only part that gets a little bit confusing is the sleeves, because you're also decreasing, which then messes with the pattern. So I just tried to be a little bit smart about it to make sure that I didn't always follow the very first part of the pattern. I really kept in mind the piece that came after so that I could adjust the first few stitches as I was decreasing to make sure that I didn't lose the pattern overall, because especially when you get to the rib, or sorry, not the rib, the diamond pattern, if you're off on that just by following the chart, then obviously your pattern is not going to look like a diamond. So this was pretty much the only thing I was knitting on for the last few weeks, especially while I was sick. I really just tried to get through it, and I'm glad that I started it early because I feel like I was kind of down to the wire. And even I blocked this Sunday or Monday last week, and it took almost a week to dry. So I feel like it's just kind of coming up against when I have to leave. A modification I made because I was sick and just feeling very lazy while I was lying in bed is on the bottom rib. So I couldn't, for the size 1 to 2, complete the entire rib pattern, the broken rib pattern. So I cut it in half, and then you're supposed to do some garter rows to make sure that there's a bit more differentiation. So you can see that's typically what happens, is 2 garter rows that happen before you start the rib. And I didn't do that. So it's kind of a shame now that I look at it, because definitely it would have helped differentiate from the bottom ribbing, and now they kind of blend together. And then I also just wasn't in the mood to do the Italian bind off like the pattern called for, and I ended up doing Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, which I don't hate the look of it, but it definitely stands out, where you can see like traditional Italian bind off on the sleeves. It looks much better, but since he's gonna grow out of this probably in a year, I decided I would just leave it as is. So pattern wise, super happy with this. I am definitely tempted now to make one for myself. I just don't know with all the other plans that I have if I will get to it this winter, but definitely this was something that I enjoyed making. Where I wasn't super happy was the yarn. So I decided to use Drop's extra fine merino for this, which is super wash. It was really well priced. I think total for the sweater I paid around 25 euros in yarn for 6 balls, and I actually had a whole ball left, so I could have gotten away with 5. So really well priced garment, but especially with the super wash, it had a kind of slippery texture to it that I didn't love. And the yarn quality in general wasn't great. So there was a point where there was a knot in the yarn that I then obviously had to break the yarn and start over so I wouldn't end up with that little knot in my piece. And then, where is it? There was also these parts where there was suddenly like black thread connected to the ball, and when you would try to kind of take that little black thread off of it, it would end up splitting the yarn. So in some cases I just left it as is, but it was just weird when it wasn't like a normal rustic yarn where when you have those sort of heathered spots, it feels like it belongs in the yarn. This was just really random that those would appear. And the other part that I didn't like is on one of the balls, the yarn actually had kind of like split apart midway through. So it kind of untangled itself and like ripped apart. So then I had to split the yarn and again introduce a new end to weave in. So while the yarn was affordable, and I think for a children's garment it's nice because it did block out really well. It was super stiff and heavy before I wet blocked this. I think the feeling after is much nicer. Also the fact that they can put it in the washing machine will be really nice. So I think it's good for a kid's garment, but it's not necessarily yarn I would work with again for something for myself, even though the price is good. So final kind of thoughts on this. Pattern, amazing, loved it, really clear, as with most petite knit patterns, but yarn would maybe make a different decision next time, like I think it called for Peer Gynt or Sunday by Sadness, so maybe I would use that next time. Okay. So finished garment number 2 is something that is brand new to you guys. I showed the yarn last time, but you've never seen the actual project. And this is also going to be a gift knit for when I go home, and it's a Christmas gift for my niece, which is my best friend's daughter, and she's 10. So last time I had showed that I started an Ammil Beanie by Bluebird Pine Shop. In neon pink, and then I said apparently she's not in her pink phase anymore, so she has requested beige. So I obliged and I ended up buying the Lang Merino 70 yarn, which is also super wash, in this light beige color. So typically I don't work with cables. They're not my favorite to knit, and also I just don't love the look for me, but I really like this pattern as a hat, and it was nice because it went really quickly because of the thickness of the yarn, but also the pattern was really interesting. So this has a cable, and then this it's called the dandelion stitch, or sorry, the flower stitch, and I didn't originally understand the pictures that were showing because I've never worked this stitch before. So I Googled it, and it's the dandelion stitch that is very similar. It's not done exactly the same in the video I found, but you get the gist of it. So that brings more context to the actual pictures. I'll try to remember to include a link to the YouTube video that I watched. But yeah, basically every row of this is different. So on the adult size, you end up doing, I think, almost 3 repeats of the entire pattern, and then 6 decrease rounds. My issue also with this hat, so the pattern was clear, really enjoyed it. I think it took me about a week to knit this, but again, super wash yarn. I didn't love it. This one especially felt really, really slippery, but less heavy than the storm sweater yarn. But also immediately in my first ball, I ended up with, where is it? A knot, which I decided to just go with in this case and not split the yarn because it was so early on, and I just figured I'd be able to hide it, which it actually worked out perfect because it's right above this fold line, which means she might feel it while she's wearing it, but you definitely don't see it. And then the other issue I had is I bought enough meterage of the yarn itself. So I got 2 balls, which was supposed to be pretty much exactly what the pattern called for. And I ended up running out before I got through all the decrease rounds. So you're supposed to do 6 of the decrease, including another flower stitch. And I wasn't able to get to that. So I ended up just doing 2 rapid decreases. So I did 2 rounds, I think, of knit 2 together, and then I just cinched it at the top. So I don't think it makes a big deal. It does shorten it by about 4 rows, but she's 10, so I think that's fine for her. And I'll just put this on. Like, I'm an adult size, I have a pretty small head, but I think this will be more than enough to fit her. And the pattern does call for a pom-pom on the top, which I did buy, but I got it in Canada because I couldn't find any that I really liked here, and they wouldn't get to me in time before I left. So I'm having one shipped to my mom's house, which ended up being interesting, trying to find shops where I could buy them in time, not buy them in bulk, and not pay a fortune. I ended up finding a place in Calgary called Buttons and Loops, I think. And the shipping ended up being like 1.5 times more than the item itself. So I think the pom-pom was $9 Canadian and shipping was $15, which I wasn't really happy about, but I really felt like I couldn't give this to her without the pom-pom on top because it does really finish the look. So since it's a Christmas gift, I decided to just bite the bullet and pay the shipping, and yeah, it's fine. So hopefully she's happy with this, and she's still in her beige phase by the time I give it to her. And then, yeah, we will see what she thinks. So similar to the Storm Sweater Junior yarn, I think in this case, the pattern was great. Really enjoyed making the Ammil Beanie, but I don't necessarily think I would work with the Lang Merino 70 Superwash yarn again, just because of the issues that I had with it feeling slippery, with the knots, with the meterage running out before I expected. Just wasn't my favorite, and I think this is the first, well, these are the first projects that I think I've really worked with superwash yarn, and yeah, I can kind of see why there's mixed feelings about it for a lot of knitters. I don't think it's my favorite, but I do like the fact that especially for children's items, it's very easy to care for because you can throw it in the washing machine and then just lay it out to dry. So yeah, I think, you know, there's benefits to using it, and therefore maybe if I was making another kid's item, I would. Well, let's get into works in progress, and I'm actually going to start with a few that you haven't seen because I've just cast them on since the last episode. So the first one is the Weekend Hat by Petit Knit, and I decided to use the Drops Lima yarn that I had for this. Yarn is a wool and alpaca blend, which is 50 grams for 100 meters, and 65% wool, 35% alpaca. And it's in this, I think it was called, it's color 5310. So this is basically the same blend as I made my Sophie shawl in a few podcasts ago, and it's just the DK version rather than the, I think, Aran weight. I think I have the exact same comments that I had about the yarn for the Sophie, which is this feels itchy. It's not necessarily the most enjoyable yarn to work with, and it sheds a lot. So there's all these little hairs coming out of it, which is a little bit like mohair, but it just doesn't feel as soft as mohair. So I'm curious, the Sophie shawl does feel a little bit softer after blocking, so I'm hoping once this hat is done and blocked, it will feel a little bit nicer to the touch. But overall, I think the Drops Lima and Drops Nepal aren't necessarily yarns I would work with a lot for anything that's close to my head, or like especially right around my neck like a shawl. So I don't know if I would use it for tops either. The pattern is really clear, and it's interesting because I don't know if you can tell. Yeah. So in the Weekend Hat, it's a double folded brim, and basically you end up doing a few rounds of double knitting, about 9 centimeters in, and then another 10 centimeters later, you would do another one so that you get this easy fold line. So that's really nice. I haven't experienced that on a hat before, and it makes it very easy to flip. The only thing with this hat is because it's double folded, it's taking forever. So I've been knitting on this, not monogamously, but it was my train knit on my way to Paris and back. And usually in the evening, I get a few rounds in. So I'm hoping actually maybe by the time I leave for the trip in a couple days that I will actually be done this. But I think I still have about 10 centimeters of the final brim left and then the decreases. So we'll see. I'm not in any rush for this because I think I have nicer yarn and a similar color to make a hat that I will wear more often. But this was just really also to test out the weekend hat pattern, which I've never made before, to see if I like the style and if it's something I want to make again. Yeah, I think so far I like it, but it all comes down to the final fit and how it actually sits on my head. So I'm making the size medium right now. Typically, I think in hats I make a small, but I had more than enough yarn, so I decided to just make it a bit bigger. Also because I wasn't sure if I was going to keep it or give it as a gift knit. But because I probably won't have this done for Canada, I don't think it will be a gift knit in this case. Yeah, there's not really a whole lot to say about the weekend hat. You know, I think if people have made the weekend hat, the stall comb, the Oslo, what's your favorite from Petite Knit? I think I really like the Stockholm hat. I've made a few, one for myself, one for my husband last year, but I think the Oslo hat is still a classic, also just because you can do stockinette in the round forever, so it's a perfect travel knit because it's small, it fits in a purse, but also it's just easy. And then the other new to you guys pattern is I was really getting sick of only having brown and gray projects on my needles, which you'll see in a second literally is all I've been working on, and it was feeling very, very boring, even though those colors are always staples and they go with everything. But so I told myself the second I finished my Storm Sweater Junior, I would finally be able to cast on a new project because I wanted to stop having so many on the go. And so I cast on my Camisole No9 from My Favorite Things Knitwear. And this is knit up in the Knitting for Olive merino in bottle green. So this is a fingering weight yarn. This is knit on, I think, 3.25 needles, so quite small. I'm expecting this is going to take a while, but actually this is only 2 days of work and not even that much time, so it's going quite fast. I did screw up a little bit on the increases for the arms yesterday. I was accidentally doing make one right when I was meant to be doing make one left, but I don't think I can really tell because it's only a few of the increases up here for the every fourth round increase, and then when I got into the doubles I corrected it. So I think I'm just going to leave it as is and see, and then if I need to I'll rip back. But I am ready now to put these stitches on hold and move on to the back sleeves, the back armbands. So I think today I'm gonna pick those up and see if I can get the back panel done so that I can join in the round, because I also think this would be a really good travel knit because it's tiny, and I think since it's just stockinette, it's something easy that I can work on while I am visiting with people. So it's either gonna be this or maybe an Oslo hat for my main knit, or at least like my plain and visiting knit on the trip. So I'm really happy with the color of this as well. I think it's going to suit me very nicely. but I expect this is probably going to be a slower knit just because of the size of the needles. The other major whip that I've had ongoing, which you guys have seen a few times now, is the Salty Day sweater by Veronica Lindberg or Kudo Bakika. And I am done the body. So I just finished this actually last night, and I am ready to do the Italian bind off. So if I get that done today, I'll insert some B-roll so that you guys can actually see it on. It's definitely feeling a little bit tight right now. I tried it on last night, but it was too dark to do any good photos or video. I'm really hoping that in blocking it will stretch, but but I stupidly did not actually measure my pre-blocked gauge, so I'm not 100% sure how much it's going to grow. I might wish that I had knit a size medium in this, but we'll see. Overall, I really like the look of the pattern. This has been a bit of a labor of love. The kind of cable bit in here went really smoothly. And then when I got to this diamond pattern again, which was the second repeat, I ended up messing up the pattern and didn't realize until about 3/4 of the way through that chart, which was actually the exact same mistake that I made the first time I did that chart. So I had to do it again, which meant I think I had 2 hours of work that I had to rip back and fix, but it was worth it because I think especially with the diamond pattern, and it was right across the middle front that I had made the mistake, it would have been really obvious, which I know would have bothered me. So easy enough to just rip back to a stockinette round, start over, and make sure that this piece is as good as it can be, so I will wear it. Yeah, what else do I have to say about this? The only thing I don't really love about this is that the 2x1 rib here is the last chart right before, not chart, last kind of pattern right before the rib, because I feel like they sort of blend together. I wish it maybe had been something else right before. But the rib is twisted rib, so it's also a little bit tighter, and I think it will look good in the final version, so it's fine. I would just maybe adjust it a little bit if I were to make this again, which I probably won't. And I forgot how much twisted rib sucks, so it looks amazing. It always looks really nice, but especially on 3mm needles, for 22 rounds, it really hurt my hands, and I was just kind of ready to be done it. So I will do the Italian bind off on this one today, and then I'm ready to move on to the sleeves, which maybe I will actually pick up one of the sleeves today and get going on that. Yeah, I think same as I said last time, I'm still not 100% sure about this yarn. It's the Durarum Natura Gilead yarn in this heathered gray. I just find it a little bit more rustic feeling than I would typically like. And I know this pattern originally called for fingering and fingering and mohair held together, which gave it a little bit more of a drapey feel. I'm just hoping once this is blocked, it still feels a little bit loose and like it has some movement to it, because I'm worried when I block it, it is going to feel a little bit stiff, which I don't think goes with the pattern as well as I would like. But we'll see. I'll report back, I guess, once it's finally blocked at the very end. But so far, I like the color, I like the pattern, and I'm just really excited to continue working on this and have it off my needles so that I can wear it. So the other thing for this pattern is so at one point on the body, you end up with a back of row marker and a side stitch marker. And I forget exactly why it's in there at the start, something to do with the pattern. And then there's not really a mention of it again, so you sort of figure once you're done the diamond pattern, oh, you can probably remove this thing because you just start on the 2x1 rib. Don't do that. I did end up removing the marker and then didn't read ahead in the pattern, and it did show its face again. So I had to go back and try to count where I would have had the marker in the original spot, because there's a round where you need to, I think, decrease by about 4 stitches on the body, and it's just one round. But I think that was actually a big reason why I ended up messing up the diamond pattern, is because I removed that stitch marker. So just be mindful of that, because I did have to put it back. And then once you've done that decrease, you don't need it anymore. But I just left it until I got to the ribbing at the bottom, because I wasn't sure and I didn't want to make the same mistake. The other thing to note is that she does have a tutorial video for this pattern, which is great. It's really, really helpful, especially if you are a more beginner knitter and a lot of these techniques are new to you. But then the only part that she doesn't include in the video is probably one of the more confusing parts of the pattern, which is on chart C for the diamond pattern. You have to do a slightly different start for the knit 2 together on round 5. And the way that she writes it, you are left questioning, okay, do I do the knit 2 together, yarn over, and then start at the first square of the chart? Or do I continue after the next 5 stitches? And so I read through Ravelry, this seemed to be one of the biggest question marks for other people as well. And what you need to do is the knit 2 together, yarn over 5 stitches, and then start from that part of the pattern. Don't go back to the very start of the chart and begin from there, because you're going to end up messing up the diamond pattern and you will end up with the wrong amount of stitches and need to work back. So just be careful with that. That was kind of the only downside of the pattern that I had, but it's really nice to have a video to reference. And overall, for such a textured sweater, this has been really a joy to knit on. So really recommend it. And I think you can tell, like, I have quite a lot of work in progress, or a lot of projects that I've been doing, because I also still have half a Sunday sock to finish of my second sock, and blouse number 2, which I'm not even showing you, because even though I've made progress, it's very minimal and it's not even worth talking about. But I think there was a day a couple weeks ago where I literally worked on 5 different projects on the same day, which just is too many. I feel like I'm not really finishing anything because I have too many projects on the go right now, which is also leaving me a little bit unsatisfied. And I think you see, like, I've had so much texture to work on. So that's not very motivating when you're sick, because you just want a simple project that you can work on in the round. But my other projects, other than the Cami number 9, which I finally cast on, sorry, there's a fluff. My other ones are also like 1x1 rib, which is hard on the hands if you're doing it for too long. So yeah, I need to get my whips under control right now, so that I can just focus on a few and really finish a few projects. So similar to what I did with the storm sweater, I'm like, I am, well, going to try not to cast on anything else until I'm at least done another piece, but my trip might mess with that. So also a really exciting piece that I want to talk about. So I said in my last podcast that the cardigan number 4 from My Favorite Things Knitwear was back in my whip pile officially, and I was going to give myself a goal to try to finish it by the end of the year. And last night I ended up working on it for quite a bit because I just wanted a slightly simpler project, and I finished a sleeve. I'm so excited. I had said, sorry you guys, I feel like I keep clearing my throat. I had said in my very first podcast episode that I was thinking about frogging this. I also wasn't sure if I was really gonna like the overall fit and style on me and the color. And I am so glad that people had such strong reactions to that video and really talked me into keeping this on my needles, because I'll insert B-roll, but finishing this sleeve yesterday and trying it on, I am actually so excited now to have this in my wardrobe. I was really worried that that like really billowy sleeve wasn't gonna suit me, but I love how airy it feels. I think it's gonna be a really nice piece actually to dress up. And I realized that where the wonky laddering is happening might actually be covered by the button band, because the buttons will go on the side of the wonky piece, and then I will button it from the other side. So actually I think the nicer button band side is going to overlap with the side that's weird. So I'm still hoping I'll be able to block out some of that laddering look, but I actually think the main issue I have will just be addressed, which also solves my question of should I add buttons or not. I think for this piece, because of the challenges that I had with that ladder side on the body, I think absolutely I'm gonna have to add buttons to this just to hide that. And I think also to be able to wear it with like skirts or trousers, it will look nicer and more polished with buttons. So yeah, I think real progress on this one. Maybe in December I will achieve my goal and have this done. One thing I will say, so as I don't think I talked too much about it in my first episode, but in general, I have found this pattern for My Favorite Things Knitwear very painful. So every once in a while, she will have some patterns where you're just like, I feel like you're talking another language and I don't understand what you're asking me to do. Most of this pattern for me has been that way. I think maybe now having a bit more experience, because I started this over a year ago, maybe the start of it would be a little bit clearer, but especially if you're still somewhat new to knitting, especially new to the fisherman's rib, and the fact that you are working the button band at the same time on smaller needles as the fisherman's rib for the body, is just a really like difficult pattern. And I was reminded of that yesterday when I was working the sleeves. So I got to the point where I had to do the decreases so that you get this nice cinched in bit for the final ribbing. And I'm gonna read the pattern because it says, okay, now decrease, knit 2 together where you on the left of the 2 stitches work into the stitch below, but work into the first stitch as normal. Note, if your round begins with a knit stitch, work this as a normal and continue decreasing thereafter. And then literally the next page, the instruction says work, knit 2 together to the end of round. I have read that so many times. I read that again this morning. I still don't understand what it means. So what I ended up doing was I finished the last round of my fisherman's rib. I did knit 2 together to the end, and then I did the next round, which has I think 4 or 5 additional purl 2 together to get back to the rib pattern. And I realized what I probably should have done, because you can kind of see, yeah, there's this sort of weird pattern happening following the fisherman's rib. So it doesn't look like it flows as nicely into the sleeve as the body does. And I was working on this at, I think, 11:30 at night yesterday, because I was like, oh, I'm so close. I'm just going to finish it so that I have it to film for today. So I ended up just, doing as the pattern kind of instructed. I knit 2 together on that first round, And then this morning I woke up and I'm like, I wonder if, because the body looks better, it would have been probably a very similar decrease round. So maybe I should see what she did there. And I'm pretty sure what was meant to happen was actually doing decreases in pattern, so within the fisherman's rib pattern, which would have made more sense with why she's saying you might end up with a weird knit two together. But yeah, maybe I just have a really old version of this pattern, and maybe new ones already have this cleared up and it's written as it should be. But I still am like, was I supposed to do it like the body in pattern of fisherman's rib, or was I really meant to do knit two together? I went through so many Ravelry pages, I couldn't find any information on this or questions, so maybe I'm the only one that's confused. It doesn't bother me enough to go fix it, and maybe it's actually done the way it was supposed to do. Maybe I was supposed to just knit two together, but I'm not sure. And that's been my biggest issue with this pattern. Also, somebody else pointed out that the size small and extra small say they end up with the same amount of stitches after the decreases, and that shouldn't be true because there's more stitches on the small. So I'm pretty sure you are supposed to end with 26, which is what I have. I think it fits perfectly, so it doesn't really matter. But yeah, this pattern just, I want it to be over so I can wear this piece, and I would probably never make it again because it's just been very tedious. So just be mindful of that if you're going into this, and especially if you are a newer knitter and you're not that confident yet. There is one girl, I will see if I can link to her in my description, who at least writes a really detailed overview of how she interpreted the pattern and the changes that she made for her size. I saved that as a reference point as I was working through this because it really helped me a lot. So I would just say also, like, go through people's Ravelries and see what notes they have, because that will probably help you figure out what changes you need to make. But at least we have some progress on that one, which is really, really great. So that is all the whips that I want to talk about. Like I said, I have two others, but we haven't really done any work on them. So I will leave those for a future episode where hopefully I've made more progress. All right. Let's get into acquisitions. I have a few to talk about, which also correspond to some of my upcoming projects. But first, I mentioned in my last episode, I think my last one or the one before, that my husband and I went and did a hand sculpting ceramics class, and I made a yarn bowl. And I think I inserted a picture of how it looked pre-glazing, and I was hoping that it would look a bit better once it was glazed, and I picked it up. And I got it yesterday. Oh, I'm like very embarrassed by this. As my husband called it, it looks a little bit like a zombie. I don't know. It's not very beautiful. The green is darker than I planned, and I definitely could have like cleaned up the paint lines. I feel like such an idiot. So I made a hole here, but I didn't leave a line. So I realize now too, once one project is in here to work with, it's basically stuck there until I have to break the yarn or I finish a ball. So I can only work on one project with this because I can't get the yarn out. So I don't know why I didn't make a line or the little swirly bit. So that was my mistake. But you know what? It was a beautiful memory of my husband. We had a good date day. I think it was 3.5 hours of learning to do ceramics. We really enjoyed the process, and we had a lot of fun. He made a vase, which turned out a little bit better than mine, but I would say also not the best. I think next time we'll maybe try hand sculpting, Or maybe just pottery isn't for us. I don't know. I did enjoy it, so I think I would go again, maybe make another attempt at a better functioning, better designed yarn bowl, but I don't think this is gonna get a lot of use. But it can sit in my office slash yarn room as a nice memento of a good date. Then the other yarn that I've bought, some of it is from Garntopia in Norway. So they said, I think they had their 15-year sale a couple Fridays ago, and they had 15% off, which is really nice because they carry a ton of brands that are harder to find outside of the Nordics. And 15% off meant that it kind of made the shipping costs of 25 euros a wash. So I decided, very spur of the moment, to buy yarn for a couple projects, which is maybe not the best way to plan, to just like, oh, I've decided I just want to cast these things on, I'll just buy yarn and not really think about it. So first one is I bought the Filcolana Alva yarn. And this is 100% alpaca, 25 grams, 175 meters. And I decided to buy it to make a pair of penny gloves, which have been on my list for a while. I don't think I mentioned them in my fall knitting videos, but I've always intended to make them this winter. And so I figured, oh, I'll just throw in a couple balls. Of course, I have bought brown again, which I thought this would be a lot darker. It looked much more dark chocolate in the picture, and this is closer to a lot of the other browns I have, which is maybe good because it will match any hats that I make. But yeah, I got 2 balls of this to make penny gloves, and I think I will cast those on soon. So far, the yarn feels really nice. It's definitely very fine, and yeah, I didn't want to splurge on cashmere like some of the yarns called for in the pattern. And then the other thing that I ended up buying, so I had posted on Instagram a few weeks ago that I was thinking about, or not thinking about, I wanted to know what everybody's favorite sort of like basic sweater pattern was, because I have really felt like I want a stockinette sweater on my needles. I really love just simple patterns that are classic styles you'll wear forever. And I didn't want to remake a pattern that I had already made, like the Louvre or the Oslo sweater. So I got quite a lot of comments on that, a lot of lentos, a lot of no frills sweater, and then also a few people saying the Monday sweater by Petite Net, which I was already thinking about. Oh, and by the way, the penny gloves for the Alva yarn are also Petite Net, which I said I was going to try to move away from some of her patterns, and apparently I'm just continuing to make them. But yeah, so the Monday sweater was already on my mind, and because I've been knitting so much brown and gray lately, I really wanted to branch out and pick something more from the autumnal color palette, which is what I did with the stylist to do my color profile. They said I was a true autumn, and so therefore I was trying to find kind of an orangey rust copper color that I could do. And so I decided, since I was ordering through Garntopia, I would buy yarn that is expensive or very difficult to get at any other shops that are within the EU, and use this as a moment to try a yarn that I've been wanting to try but have never splurged on. So I bought the, what's it called? Okay, so I bought the Hjelholts Uldspinderi, Dansk Pesuld 82, in this beautiful, is it gonna focus? Yeah. Beautiful kind of, it's called Kobber, literally. It's this brownish red color. So this is 100 grams, 400 meters. I think it's 100% wool. It doesn't easily say here in a language I understand. But yeah, I have been wanting to try this brand for years, but always the shipping or the exchange rate is just very expensive. So I always talk myself out of it, and I figured, okay, well, it's 15% off, now is the moment, and I feel like with a classic sweater like the Monday sweater, I will wear it a lot. So I got this, definitely, as I think most of their yarns are, this feels very rustic. More rustic than I was expecting. So I'm hoping the mohair that it will be paired with will kind of balance that out, and also hopefully blocking will help. But if you guys have worked with this yarn before, let me know your thoughts. I love the color, and I still have to buy it. Well, no, I bought the mohair for it. It hasn't arrived yet. But with this one, I really had a challenge picking the mohair without being able to hold them up. So I intentionally didn't buy mohair at the same time as I got this, because I wanted to make sure I could see it in person and see the true color, not the monitor color, before picking a mohair to go with it. So I think I went through so many mohairs. I was like, okay, maybe I'll try to keep the cost of the mohair down and get a drops kit silk, but there's not really any color that works well with this. And then Knitting for Olive has a ton of copper, red, orange mohairs, but then I was really struggling with which one to pick for this. And then I was also looking at the Durarum Natura, I think it's Bernice, which is their new mohair. They had more of an orangey copper color. So I literally had like this yarn open on my screen and then a whole bunch of different mohairs, and I was kind of cross-checking and then holding this up against. And so I ended up going with the Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair in this case. After doing comparisons, I feel like a lot of the mohairs were leaning a bit too orange or a bit too red, and I really wanted to try to keep it closer to the dominant kind of copper color in here. So I have ordered the Knitting for Olive Claret mohair, which feels like a nice balance between like a really kind of red Bordeaux but a really like orangey coppery color. I'm hoping it will get here before my vacation, because I would really like to cast this on so I have a sweater to work on that's easy on my trip. But I'm not sure that will happen because I leave in a couple days. It has already shipped, but I think it'll be a bit of a miracle if it gets here before Tuesday morning when I need to leave. So I wanted to be my trip knit to have more of a garment to work on, but yeah, I don't think that will be the case. So maybe I will just work on my Cami number 9 and try to make some progress on that. I mentioned in a video I did on 7 patterns that are inspiring me right now that the Soft Loops sweater was on my list, which is from Other Loops, because actually it reminded me a lot of the overall look and style of the sweater number 8, which I've been thinking about working on again. But also I have been looking at blouse number 2 light, and I felt like this had sort of this like light breezy feel that would kind of fit what I was wanting in my wardrobe right now. So looking at the pattern, it calls for some different variations of Gepard yarn. So the main body yarn that it calls for is the Wild and Soft, which is 40% wild Tussa silk and 60% merino wool. And this is 50 grams for 240 meters. I color 146, which I think is Koffiecreme. I had a real challenge picking a color for this one because it doesn't offer a lot of options, and I really wanted more of a classic basic, but that wasn't cream because I have a lot of cream sweaters right now, and I also didn't want it to be really brown like this. So this is kind of in the middle. I really like the feel of this yarn so far. So I don't know if you can tell. So it has a bit of a spun texture to it, and it's just really, really light feeling. So I'm really excited to work with this. I've never worked with Gepard yarn before. But then where I was really struggling is that pattern calls for a few variations of how it's held. So you have Wild and Soft held with either Kid Silk 5 on its own, or Kid Silk Seta held double with the Wild and Soft, or Kid Silk mohair and I think Gepard cashmere lace also held with the Wild and Soft, which when I started to think about how expensive that sweater was going to be, I kind of started to worry because I already ordered this yarn, and then it was just, yeah, the costs were piling up in my head as for how much money this sweater was going to be, and it's more than I really wanted to spend on it. But then the Kid Silk 5 doesn't come in a ton of color options, at least none that I felt really went with the Koffiecreme. And again, in this case, I wanted to get the yarn, see what color it really turned out like, and then decide how to pair it. So I did a ton of research last weekend, and I really wanted to try to keep it as just one yarn held with the Wild and Soft to keep costs down. And so I was toying between the Drops Kid Silk mohair, so at least if I held the mohair double, it would be about half the price of like a Knitting for Olive mohair, or see if I could find something that was similar to the Kid Silk 5 so that I could just hold it single. And I came across, I was reading the mohair guide from Sophie from Knit Pearl Girl, and she reminded me of the Drops Drops Brushed Alpaka Silk, which is 77% alpaca, 23% silk, 25 grams for 140 meters. So this is very similar to the Kid Silk 5. But again, really limited color range. So I was toying between the light beige or this darker brown. And I ended up ordering the darker brown, obviously. And I swatched for it the day it came in. So this is the two yarns together, which I'm off gauge, so I need to go down a needle size because I have too few stitches. But they're not exactly the same color, but I really didn't want to make a similar style to the sweater number 8 in a very similar brown to what this already is. I really wanted it to feel different and lighter. So I don't think the yarn that I've ordered from Drops is going to be the right fit for this. I just also don't love the combo of these two yarns together. I think it's really kind of washing out the lightness of the Koffiecreme. So I decided yesterday to swatch. I had some Kid Silk mohair from Knitting for Olive in Mushroom Rose, which I had used for my Oslo sweater last year. And so I decided to swatch the two together very quickly to see how they looked. And I am much, much happier with this. I'm like, it's so tiny. But I think like these pair much better together. Here, I'll just hold these two up. So these are the colors together. So I think I need to try to find something that's closer to this. Drops does have, oh sorry, my needles are making noise, that's annoying. The Drops Alpaka does have a light beige color that would maybe work. And then I think I paid for 8 balls of this, like 20 euros, which would help keep costs down, like I said. but I'm just worried it will feel a bit too beige and not enough kind of in between dark brown and light beige to go with the cream. Or do I just bite the bullet and order all the mohair of the mushroom rose, because I know those colors work well together. It's just that's going to be a really expensive purchase, and I think the Wild and Soft was already like 50 or 60 euros. I need to double check. But yeah, it's one of those sweaters where I don't know if I want to invest a lot of money into it, but because of the color I'm looking for and the very specific kind of weight that the yarn needs to be so that it needs to feel drapey and soft. That's the whole point. The name is literally soft loop sweater, and that's the overall look I want to go for. So I'm just struggling with how exactly to achieve that, without spending a fortune. So if anybody has advice, also for any other yarns that are very similar to the brushed alpaca silk from Drops, so that kind of 25 grams for 140 meters length. I'm having a tough time finding other options. So I'm very open to feedback. Otherwise, I might need to look at a mohair held double with this to see if that works. So I was hoping to cast that on pretty soon, but I think I have to go back to the drawing board a little bit. But overall, very, very happy with the Wild and Soft. And yeah, I think for a spur of the moment purchase, it was pretty good. I am excited to work with this Hjelholts yarn, and we will see how that goes and if I end up liking the rusticness of that yarn in the end. I guess we'll see. So I think that's everything for me today. I feel like definitely I had a lot more to cover than usual in this episode, but it's probably good because I will go silent for a little bit while I enjoy time with family in Canada in the next few weeks. And then when I get back, I guess we're into December and holiday season. So if you enjoyed this video, it would mean a lot to me if you liked and also commented. I really enjoy having conversations with everyone and hearing your perspectives. It means a lot. And of course, please subscribe. I'm still really amazed at how many people have chosen to subscribe and listen to me talk about knitting things every few weeks. Thank you so much for watching today. As always, it means a lot to me, and I will see you when I'm back from Canada. Bye, everyone.